My father-in-law hated me. He made it clear at the wedding. He made it clear at every dinner. But then, he was diagnosed with dementia, and his mind started slipping. He started confusing me with someone named Marcus. He would whisper secrets to me. Dark, financial secrets. Hidden bank accounts. Accounts my wife was using to slowly drain my business. My name is David. I'm 38 years old. I own a commercial construction company. I pour concrete. I frame buildings. I work with my hands. I built my life from the dirt up. I'm a quiet man by nature. I don't like loud arguments. I don't believe in unnecessary drama. I believe in showing up, doing the work, providing for the people you love, and taking care of your own. That's how my grandfather raised me. I value loyalty above everything else. When I make a promise, I keep it, even when it gets heavy. 8 years ago, I married Sarah. She was elegant, brilliant, a financial consultant who lived in crisp suits and spreadsheets. We made sense together, the blue-collar worker and the white-collar strategist. I trusted her completely. I handled the physical labor of my business. She handled the books. She paid the invoices. She managed the taxes. We were a team. At least, that's what I told myself every morning. But there was always one shadow hanging over our marriage. Her father, Arthur. Arthur was a retired investment banker. Old money. A man who measured your worth by the label inside your suit jacket and the prestige of your last name. He hated me. He made it clear on the day we met. He looked at my calloused hands with pure disgust. He made it clear at our wedding, too. During his toast, he didn't welcome me to the family. He looked right at me, raised his glass of expensive champagne, and told the room he hoped I could afford his daughter's taste. People laughed. They thought it was a dry joke. I knew it wasn't. I saw the coldness in his eyes. For 7 long years, I swallowed my pride. I sat across from Arthur at Thanksgiving dinners. I listened to his endless backhanded compliments. How's the little paving hobby, David? Still coming home with dirt under your nails? I never snapped. I never raised my voice. I smiled. I poured him more wine. Because I loved Sarah. And you don't make your wife choose between you and her father. Even when she stays silent. Even when she never defends you. I just kept the peace. And I worked harder. I grew my company into a massive operation. Multi-million-dollar commercial contracts. A fleet of heavy machinery. I made more money than Arthur did in his final working years. But to him, I was always just the hired help. A peasant sleeping in his castle. Then, everything changed. Last year, Arthur started slipping. It started small. Forgetting where he parked his car. Repeating the same stories. Then the diagnosis came down like a hammer. Rapid onset dementia. His sharp, cruel mind just collapsed. Within 6 months, he couldn't live alone safely. Sarah was devastated. She was his only child, his golden girl. So, we moved him into our guest house. We hired a daytime nurse to help with his medication. But in the evenings, the responsibility fell on us. Or rather, it fell on me. Sarah couldn't handle seeing him like that. She said it broke her heart too much. She would lock herself in my home office, going over the company accounts late into the night, working until midnight to avoid the reality of her dying father. I didn't blame her. Grief makes people hide. So, I became the caretaker. I fed the man who hated me. I helped him walk to the bathroom. I sat with him on the porch in the dark. At first, he was angry. He would curse at me. He would tell me I was stealing his daughter. But as the months passed, the anger faded into confusion. And then, into a strange, unsettling clarity. His mind time-traveled. He stopped seeing David, the contractor, and he started confusing me with someone else. One rainy Tuesday night, the nurse went home early. I brought Arthur a cup of warm tea. I sat in the armchair across from his bed. He was staring at the wall. Then, he turned and looked at me. His eyes looked different tonight. Not cloudy, sharp, like the old Arthur was briefly back in the driver's seat. He leaned forward. His voice dropped to a harsh, secretive whisper. "Marcus," he said. I froze. I didn't know a Marcus. I opened my mouth to correct him, to gently remind him I was David. But before I could speak, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. Desperate. "Marcus," he whispered again. "Did the transfer go through?" I stared at him in the dim light. "What transfer, Arthur?" I asked softly. He smiled. A cold, familiar, arrogant smile. "The money from the contractor's business." My heart stopped dead in my chest. "Sarah set up the offshore account," he muttered. "Just like we planned." I stopped breathing. The room went completely silent. Only the sound of the rain against the window. My brain tried to reject the words. Offshore account. The contractor's business. My business. I looked at Arthur's frail, wrinkled face. He wasn't joking. Dementia strips away your filters. It takes away your ability to lie. It leaves nothing but the raw, jagged truth. And right now, Arthur thought he was talking to a co-conspirator. I had a choice to make. Wake him up from his delusion. Or become Marcus. I swallowed hard. I kept my voice steady. Calm. The transfer went through. I lied. But I need to confirm the numbers, Arthur. He leaned back against his pillows and let out a dry, raspy laugh. Good, he muttered. Sarah said the brute was asking questions. My stomach turned to ice. The brute. For the last 6 months. My company's profit margins had been strangely tight. Sarah told me it was inflation. Rising costs of lumber and steel. I believed her. Because she was my wife. Because you don't audit the woman you sleep next to. He's a fool, Marcus, Arthur whispered. His eyes locked onto mine. Cruel and incredibly lucid. He works like a dog in the dirt. And he lets my daughter hold the leash. She's been siphoning it for 2 years. 2 years. That meant it started right after we bought our house. Right after I gave her full administrative control of the accounts. Where is she keeping the real ledgers? I asked. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I prayed my voice wouldn't shake. Arthur closed his eyes. The brief window of clarity was closing. The terrifying fog was rolling back into his mind. The blue drive. He mumbled softly. In her vanity. Behind the mirror. Then his head slumped to the side. He was asleep. Just like that. Leaving me standing alone in the dark. Holding a cold cup of tea. With my entire reality shattered at my feet. I walked out of the guest house. The rain soaked right through my shirt. But I didn't feel the cold. I walked into the main house. It was dead quiet. I crept up the stairs. Our bedroom door was cracked open. Sarah was fast asleep. Her soft, steady breathing filled the room. The woman I loved. The woman I promised to protect. I walked silently past our bed. Over to her antique makeup vanity. I reached my hand behind the heavy glass mirror. My fingers felt along the dusty wood. Until they brushed against something hard. A small, plastic square. Taped to the back of the glass. I pulled the plastic square free. It was a blue USB drive. Small enough to swallow. Heavy enough to sink my entire life. I stood there in the dark bedroom, listening to my wife breathe. The woman I had spent 8 years providing for. The woman I trusted with my livelihood. I didn't wake her up. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. When you work in construction, you learn a basic rule. Never demolish a load-bearing wall until you know exactly what's holding the roof up. I walked silently out of the bedroom, down the stairs, into my home office. I locked the heavy oak door behind me. I sat at my desk. My hands were shaking, just slightly. I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flashed in the dark room. A password prompt appeared. Sarah was brilliant. But arrogant people always leave a back door. Because they don't believe anyone is smart enough to catch them. I tried our anniversary. Error. I tried her father's birthday. Error. I sat back and thought about Arthur. Old money. Prestige. Legacy. I typed in the name of Arthur's childhood estate in Connecticut. Oakmont. The little loading wheel spun. And the drive opened. There were dozens of folders. Neatly labeled. Organized by year and by financial quarter. I clicked on a master spreadsheet. Rows and rows of numbers filled the screen. I felt the blood drain from my face. She hadn't just taken a little off the top. She had built an entire parallel financial universe. I recognized the names of my company's projects. The Riverside Warehouse. The downtown parking garage. The new city library. For every massive project I sweat over, Sarah had created phantom suppliers. A fake concrete vendor. A fake scaffolding rental company. She drafted the invoices. She approved them as the company's financial officer. And she wired the money out. It went to an LLC registered in Delaware. And from there, straight to a bank in the Cayman Islands. I tracked the dates on the spreadsheet. The very first transfer happened exactly 1 month after we returned from our honeymoon. There was no inflation eating my profits. There was no rising cost of steel. It was just my wife, systematically bleeding me dry. I clicked on a folder labeled Correspondence. It was full of emails saved as PDF files between Sarah and a man named Marcus Vance, an offshore wealth manager, Arthur's old protege. I opened an email from 3 years ago. Marcus had written, Arthur says the brute won't notice a 5% margin drop. He's too busy pouring cement. Sarah's reply was right beneath it. You're right. David never looks at the ledgers. Keep the transfers small and steady. They were laughing at me. In writing, while I was paying the mortgage, while I was funding their lavish lifestyle, while I was paying for Arthur's expensive memory care nurses, while I was physically lifting that hateful old man out of his bed every night. The sun started to peek through the office blinds. I heard footsteps on the hardwood floor upstairs. Sarah was awake. I quickly ejected the flash drive. I slipped it into my pocket. A few minutes later, the office door handle turned. She knocked softly, realizing it was locked. I stood up, took a deep breath, and opened it. She stood there in her expensive silk robe, holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling her perfect, loving smile. You're up early, honey, she said softly. Just trying to get ahead on the new downtown project, I replied. My voice sounded perfectly calm, smooth. It terrified me how easily I could lie to her now. She walked over and kissed my cheek. She smelled like vanilla. Don't work too hard, David, she murmured, handing me a mug. We have plenty of money. I looked at her, staring into the eyes of a stranger. You're right, I said. She smiled again and walked toward the kitchen. I closed the office door. Divorce wasn't an option. Divorce meant she took half of what was left legally, and she had already stolen the rest. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a business card for an old friend, a ruthless forensic accountant. I didn't just want my money back. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted to burn her castle to the ground. I met Thomas in a diner 2 towns over. He was an ex-IRS forensic accountant, a quiet, relentless man in a cheap suit. I slid the blue flash drive across the table. He didn't ask about my feelings. He didn't offer any empty sympathy. He just plugged it into his secure laptop and started reading. For 2 hours, I drank black coffee. I watched the diner slowly empty out. Finally, Thomas closed the screen. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. She's good, he muttered. But she got arrogant. She used the same IP address for the transfers. Our home Wi-Fi, I said. My voice sounded completely hollow. Thomas nodded slowly. If you divorce her now, it's a bloodbath. She'll tie the offshore accounts up in international litigation. You'll spend 5 years fighting for your own money, and she'll drain the business while you do it. I looked out the diner window. The rain was finally stopping. So how do I bury her? I asked. Thomas smiled a very thin smile. We don't stop the leaks, David. We drain the pool. For the next month, I lived a double life. I went to work in the morning. I poured concrete. I checked on the framing of my buildings. But behind the scenes, I was quietly dismantling my own empire. I set up a new corporate entity, completely in my name, legally untouchable by Sarah. I transferred the leases on all my heavy machinery. I moved my best crews over to the new payroll. I spoke to my biggest clients in private. I explained there was a necessary corporate restructuring. They trusted me. They signed the new contracts without a second thought. Within 4 weeks, my original company, the one Sarah was carefully bleeding dry, was nothing but a hollow shell, a ghost ship waiting to sink. The hardest part wasn't the legal paperwork. The hardest part was going home. Every night, I walked through the front door. I took off my muddy work boots, and I had to look at my wife. I had to eat dinner across from her. I had to listen to her talk about her day. How are the new projects, honey? She would ask, pouring herself a glass of expensive red wine. Tough, I would lie. Margins are still really tight. She would give me a sad, sympathetic look. We'll get through it, David. You just keep working hard. It took everything in my soul. Not to flip the dining table over. Not to shatter her wine glass against the wall. But I just smiled. And I agreed. I also stopped being the loving son-in-law. I still made Arthur his evening tea. I still helped him back to his bed. But the warmth was completely gone. I didn't speak to him. I didn't comfort him when he was confused. He never called me Marcus again. The dementia had pulled him back into the dark. He was just a frail, bitter old man, living in a house funded by my sweat. I looked at him with pure, cold indifference. By week 5, Thomas called me. The trap was fully set. The old company bank accounts were nearly empty. If Sarah tried to make a transfer now, it would bounce. But I didn't just want to stop her from stealing. I wanted the money in the Cayman Islands back. All of it. I needed her to willingly wire it home. So, I created the bait. That Friday, I came home early. I brought a bottle of expensive champagne. Sarah looked up from her laptop, surprised. What are we celebrating? She asked. I sat down next to her on the leather couch. I looked her dead in the eyes. I just got offered a massive state contract. A $40 million development. It will set us up for life, Sarah. Her eyes lit up with pure, unfiltered greed. But there's a catch, I said quietly. I need a $2 million cash bond by Wednesday, or they give the contract to someone else. I sighed, rubbing my temples, acting defeated. I might have to mortgage the house. Unless we can find a private investor. The room went completely still. Sarah stared at her laptop screen, her mind working a million miles a minute, calculating the ultimate payday. Then, she turned to me, and she smiled softly. Don't worry about the house, David. Let me see what I can do. She didn't hesitate. Greed makes smart people incredibly blind. For 3 days, I watched her work. She made hushed phone calls from her car. She spent hours locked in my home office, drafting fake loan agreements, creating a paper trail for her private investor. By Tuesday evening, she came into the kitchen. She poured 2 glasses of expensive red wine and handed me one with a triumphant smile. The money will be in the account tomorrow morning, she said. $2 million. You got the contract, David. I clinked my glass against hers. We got the contract. I corrected her. She beamed. Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. I sat in my truck outside a local bank branch. The engine was idling. I was staring at the banking app on my phone, waiting. At 8:14 a.m., the screen refreshed. Pending wire transfer. Origin, Grand Cayman. Amount, $2,100,000. She hadn't just sent back what she stole. She had scraped together an extra $100,000. Her own personal savings. Just to make the transaction look legitimate. To make sure she got a piece of the $40 million. I watched the little green loading circle spin. By 9:15 a.m., the funds officially cleared. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Thomas, the accountant. The bird is in the cage. I turned off the truck. I walked into the bank. I sat down in a leather chair across from the branch manager, and I signed the papers to wire every single penny into my new, legally untouchable corporation. Then, I closed the old account. Permanently. I drove home at noon. The neighborhood was perfectly quiet. Lawnmowers humming in the distance. I walked into the house. It smelled like vanilla candles and fresh coffee. The life I had built with my bare hands. I walked upstairs to our master bedroom. I pulled a heavy canvas duffel bag from the closet, and I started packing. Just the essentials. Work jeans, flannel shirts, my heavy boots. I left the tailored suit she bought me. I left the expensive watch sitting on the nightstand. I didn't want anything she had touched. I was zipping the bag closed when I heard her footsteps. She walked into the bedroom, holding a tablet, probably checking flight prices. She stopped dead in the doorway. Her eyes darted from the duffel bag to my face. David, she asked. Her voice was tight, uncertain. What are you doing? Packing, I said calmly. I picked up the bag and slung it over my shoulder. She took a step forward. Did something happen with the state contract? She asked. Panic was starting to bleed into her tone. There is no contract, Sarah, I said. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the little blue flash drive. I walked over to her pristine makeup vanity, and I set it down on the glass, right where I had found it. Next to it, I placed a thick manila envelope. The legal dissolution papers for my old company. Sarah stared at the blue drive. I watched the exact moment her reality broke. The color completely drained from her cheeks. Her breathing turned shallow and fast. The transfer cleared this morning, I told her. My voice was perfectly steady. No anger. No yelling. Just the cold, hard weight of the truth. I moved all of it to a new corporate entity. One you have absolutely no legal claim to. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't speak. Her perfect, arrogant composure shattered into pieces. You, she finally choked out. You stole from me. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I drained the pool, Sarah. Just like you and Marcus planned. Her knees gave out. She sank onto the edge of the mattress. She didn't scream. She didn't try to deny it. Because she knew she was caught. The old company is dead, I said softly. There is no money left. The mortgage on this house is due in 12 days. You better hope your father has some hidden assets left. Because I'm not paying for his nurses anymore. I turned my back on her. I walked out of the bedroom, down the hardwood stairs for the last time. I walked out the front door and down the driveway. I passed the guest house. Arthur was sitting on the porch in his wheelchair, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket, staring blankly at the street. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know his empire was gone. I didn't stop. I just threw my bag into my truck. It's been 6 months since that day. Sarah tried to take me to court. But her high-priced lawyer dropped her. The second Thomas handed over the forensic audit. She had to sell the house at a massive loss. She couldn't afford Arthur's private care anymore. He was moved to a state-run Medicaid facility. I heard through mutual friends that Sarah is renting a tiny apartment, working as a basic bookkeeper for a local car dealership. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel angry or bitter, either. I just wake up early. I pour my coffee. I go to my sites, and I pour concrete. My grandfather always told me to take care of your own, and I still believe that. But now I know. You have to make sure they're actually your own first.